let's bring things back to Marybeth and see what she's going to give us next.
All right. Well, coincidentally or serendipitously, however we want to look at it, this is one of the very few poems I wrote during COVID. I was one of those people who shut down during COVID rather
Oh,
than
really?
Me
getting a
too.
lot of writing. Yeah,
Really?
I hardly wrote anything.
I did more. I did more of everything. I also practiced a lot more. My trumpet playing got a lot better during COVID because I just practiced 3 times as much. But
I,
I'm sorry, this is your story.
I stopped writing poetry for like 4 years. I didn't write anything. And
No
then
kidding.
started writing essays just to do something different because I couldn't get back to it.
Wow.
I was teaching online for those 2 years, and it was just driving us and just worried about my kids. But yeah, I shut down too. Mary Beth was like, no, I got nothing in me.
Exactly how I felt. Yep.
Well, I'm glad you both came out of it. I was just like, now everything else is so wrong. I'm just going to keep doing what I know how to do. This is how I'll stabilize my reality around that part of it. So I was fortunate that it didn't nuke my ability to do it. So then that meant that I could lean on my ability to do it, which was a blessing, really.
Yes, absolutely.
So which one will this be then, Mary Beth?
This will be listening to pet sounds instead of making the hospital visit I wish I could make.
Oh boy. Good.
Okay. Listening to pet sounds instead of making the hospital visit I wish I could make. Last night's storm blew through, taking every loose branch with it. You gathered those that survived and set them ablaze in the fire pit. They deserve another half-life, you said. One that transforms rather than disintegrates, like gauges transform the earlobe from a pinprick incapable of illuminating the stars to large-screen viewing of the night sky. You keep the fire going for hours on nothing but twigs, and we listen to the only Beach Boy album I can stomach, a marvel of introspection, harmony, and Brian Wilson, when they finally left the California girls behind, proving you don't have to be a parrot of yourself, someone whose first comforting words have devolved into a repetition of you can do it and how can I help you? I will do better. I will burn down that ladder of inertia and save the sparks. There is no end of dead branches, and we move our chairs closer to the flames.
Wow.
I remember seeing that title and going like, Pet Sounds is such an important album to me. When I was a teenager, I got it because my uncle had introduced me to the Beach Boys. He was a Beach Boys guy. He was older than me, and all the surfing stuff and the car stuff, which was fine when I was a kid. But when I hit 15, and God Only Knows and Sleep Jumpy and those songs on Pet Sounds, like, I mean, maybe made a sensitive boy not feel alone.
Yeah.
And he was the
And
oldest of 3 brothers too, and I was the oldest of 3 brothers, and like who liked art and stuff. And like, oh, I know what he's talking about, and just thank you for bringing that poem that in. And it's not for everyone, but but it's beautiful. It's a prose poem.
Yeah, there's something. There's something. This is going to sound a little strange. There's something almost mythic about this to me. And what I mean by that is, on the surface level, it all is perfectly familiar and comprehensible. That the storm blows through and there's all this dead wood that you can then use to build a fire, and so, except for a question that I have about the ear piercing, which I'll get to in a moment. It's all, as I say, it's all perfectly. I can envision it, but there's another whole really deep kind of mythic level that you can read this on. If you think of everything in symbolic terms, of a storm blowing through destroying things, being committed to a transformation that's not a complete renewal of life, but an extension of life into a half-life where you're consumed. And yet the consuming is it's all wrapped up in not having to be a parrot of yourself, which you're talking about how Brian's writing songs that aren't about cars and girls anymore. He's not being a parrot. He's moving on into these other areas. I mean, any songwriter worth his or her salt would kill to have written God Only Knows. I certainly would. And yet, as I say, symbolically, there's something really close-knit about getting to the end here of there's no end of dead branches. We move our chairs closer to the flames. No end of dead branches means the fire can go on forever, and we can get closer to the warmth of it. So in other words, this when I hear this or when I read this, it flashes back and forth between something that seems very, very quotidian and something that seems not just symbolic, but like I said, linked together in a kind of a mythic, the details in a kind of a mythic way. Maybe that's just maybe that's not anything that you had in mind, Marybeth, but that's just that's how it strikes me.
Oh, I think that's cool. I mean, for me, it was like a push and pull of, there's stuff you want to do that you can't do because of the time that we're in. But I've been going through some things for the last maybe 10 years with family members. And I find that in a lot of ways I have shut down. And I have writing, but sometimes it's really hard to let yourself be known when you have things that you have to keep private because they're not really yours, they're somebody else's.
Uh-huh.
And so that's a real struggle for me. And so I thought that the part of what the poem was about for me was about, addressing that in some way.
Wow.
That I will burn down that ladder of inertia and save the sparks. Like, what? Where did you get that line from? It's amazing.
It is an amazing line.
And there is something mythic. It's something like, what's the word? It's like, there's, well, it's just anything with fire and primordial and magic and just witchy and like there's spells going on, but it's like really, really captures. And it does, it sort of has that COVID-y moment where you're inside this. We're all inside that darkness and huddled up with the people we could huddle up with if you were fortunate enough to have people to huddle up and get close with. I had the poet and writer essayist Sabrina Oramark. We were talking once about how we almost miss some of those days of lockdown because we knew we both had young kids at the time. They were home, they were safe, they're in the house always.
Wow.
Now that they could go out, it becomes scary again. So we were all huddled together. It was kind of sad and terrifying. It was also like, but we're together. And there was something kind of beautiful about huddling, getting closer to the flames, getting closer to that fire that was us,
Yeah, I mean, that's in the cave.
Yeah. Like,
the family huddles by the fire inside the cave, and the predators are outside, but they can't get in. I mean, this goes very far back.
Yeah.
So my question, Marybeth, is I'm tripping on the word gauges because I don't quite understand the earlobe with the pinprick incapable of illuminating the stars to large screen viewing of the night sky. It's the gauges that's making that transformation.
Yes.
But what kind of gauges are these?
Haven't you seen people with those ear things that they just get slightly bigger, then that's their purpose, is that they start very small and then they use a bigger gauge and a bigger gauge and a bigger gauge to make a bigger hole in their ear?
Oh.
almost like guys have like things like this in their ear after a while, just a big hole that they put there. It's called gauging when you gauge your ear.
That's okay. That's my ignorance.
That's I was on a college campus for a while, and
Okay, that's that's my ignorance shouting out loud and proud. No, I was completely unaware. I've seen that, but I didn't know. It never occurred to me how. It makes perfect sense. Of course, that's how you would get a hole big enough for a silver dollar in your ear. Why you'd want to do it, I don't know. But again, that takes me back to primordial times in the tribe. Okay, so so the pinprick. Okay, so in other words, eventually you have a hole big enough to view the night sky through?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you. I'm glad I had the opportunity to ask you. Because if I just read this in a book, I would go, what? So those are called gauges, eh? And so they're separate things that you get that you buy bigger and bigger and bigger ones, and they stretch. Wow.
That's my understanding.
People be strange.
Yeah, I remember they're kind of they were sort of big in the late '90s, and then they came back like 5-10 years ago. They started getting popular again. I'm like, I don't know, man. You might regret that later.
That's what I kept thinking.
Well, again, to go back to my comment about not having children, you've had to actually process this as a potential issue for your children. So that's why you're up on it. It paid for you to be informed.
Luckily, mine have just stuck to tattoos. So,
wow. Well, yeah. Why can you tell us why the prose poem treatment form?
it's hard to explain, but there are times when there's something about a very tight paragraph for me that just encapsulating something in a block just feels like the way to go. And it did for this.
Interesting. But you make a distinction when you do it between that and writing a paragraph.
Yes.
So it's not.
Because I do write flash fiction too. But, to me, the difference is narrative versus lyric. That the flash fiction has more of a narrative arc, and then prose poems don't usually, for me. They're not usually narrative in nature.
Okay. I mean, this kind of has narrative elements. It's got sequence and consequence. Because it starts with the storm, and everything that flows from it is a consequence of the storm having brought down all these branches.
Yeah, true.
Interesting.
I met a writer once who said, because I have some prose poems, and are they flash essays? Are they prose poems? And as a writer, she said, like, just let the bookstore decide.
I like that. I like that.
Put it where section you want to put it in, just as long as you put it in the store,
Wow. Well, this is good. I'm learning some things about prose poems tonight because I never really.
It is a weird ground. Like, what am I doing here? And why am I suddenly? I'll read my prose poem next. But my editor, he's like, I heard him say once, "Yeah, no line breaks. It's not a poem." But he published a book of mine with several prose poems in it. But I'm like, okay, we have different thoughts on that. But yeah, what is it? Sometimes they use poetic effects like repetition or rhythms or something like that. Like,
Sure.
But you can do that in an essay or fiction too. So I don't know.
Well, the other thing is you can use all of those in a paragraph form, but you can also break the paragraph into lines while continuing to use all of the same elements.
Yep.
So that's, I guess, it feels right to me. Explanation is probably the best one.
Yeah, because you could like scan like the Gettysburg Address or like Declaration of Independence. It's very very iambic. There's that sort of rhetorical move. It's very
Oh
iambic.
yeah, it's native to the language.
Yeah. So that took me necessarily, but
Wow. All right. Well, so are you going to read yours then?
I'll do mine too. Cause just because Marybeth read hers and see how it goes. So this one's called 13. Again, it's another poem by my daughter 13 years later. Um, I do have poems of my sons too, but I just didn't have as many here. And this, yeah, this I had read this wonderful poem in Poetry Magazine by my friend Lynn Melnick, and she has a poem called 12, and in it she compares her life because she had, went through rehab and like sex work and stuff, and like and at 12, 13, and 12 years old, and comparing her life to what her first child was going through at 12 and how they were different and how like lucky she has to have a child who doesn't have to have this necessarily the same life. And I thought I was so inspired by it. I was like, I gotta write, I'm gonna try to do that. I actually emailed her. I'm like, I'm gonna write a poem just like yours. This won't be as good, but I'm gonna try to, I'm gonna totally rip off your idea. But my daughter just turned 13. I'm gonna do the same thing. And her poem's in couplets. I don't know why I think I may have started trying to shape this with line breaks, with couplets, with stanzas, and it just didn't really work for me. And I just when I put it into a like Mary Beth said, like a block paragraph, it seemed to find its home in there.
Huh.
Um, an aside about this poem to my a colleague of mine when I was working at Phillips Exeter Academy, she taught this my book that this poem is into a few classes, and my daughter was a senior in high school at the time, at the same high school, and she said, "Hey, I heard there's a poem about me in your book that everyone's reading." Oh, dang. She's like, I got to read it. I'm like, okay. So I gave her the book. She went into the other room, came back. She's like, okay, that's good. So I got her seal of approval. I should have probably done that before I
Wow.
sent it to the publisher, but she did appreciate the what I was trying to do with it. So yeah, this one's called 13 after Lynn Melnick's 12. I think actually, yeah, because this is a copy. I think in my book version of it, I do mention her name from the start, but I'll just do it like that is now. Delaney, when I was your age, I loved a girl named Jen, and when she had Becky asked me to come over that blue October afternoon to the house where she was babysitting, and I slammed hard to the street, bombing down a hill on my Jeff Phillips skateboard, one kryptonic wheel catching a stone, my elbow all road rash and blood. And when later I sat next to Jen on the couch, I think she expected me to kiss her, but I wasn't sure and didn't know how to be sure, so I played Don't Break the Ice with the kid she was sitting for. And wasn't I such a gentleman, a good boy, and so terrified of a girl? Delaney, your dolls, your layers, your rays look dusty on your bedroom shelf. When I was your age, my G.I. Joe still posed, but I was scared to play with them in case Dad came home muttering, "He's weird," to Mom. So when I was your age, I made myself go outside to play football with my brother's friends. When I was your age, I stopped talking to Reggie about the X-Men on the bus, even though the fall of the mutants was upon us. When I was your age, I finally figured out how to punch a boy back hard enough he wouldn't ever hit me again before school on the blacktop as I leaned against the chain-linked fence that covered our backs from the knuckles and grabs of older boys. You tell me the cool girls are mean. You say you don't bother with them, but have you ever been in love? Brought to balefire in another's glance? When I was your age, the girl I loved dumped me the night a ball went through Buckner's legs, and the Sox would lose the series and she kissed Dave. Is a broken heart still a hurt all over the skin? Is this what you and Mom are whispering? You told me kids you know are kissing. When I was your age, some friends were getting laid, but I just wanted to be seven again and forever in Miss Q's class drawing pictures of Luke and R2. When I was your age, we started sneaking beers because we were supposed to start sneaking beers. But Delaney, be safe. Keep sitting on the den couch with us to argue and angle about what show we should watch on a Friday night because when I was your age, Friday night was football games, showing off to the girls by getting bloody in games or smear the queer. Because when I was your age, gay was AIDS, and we were all too afraid to say anything but what we thought was the right thing. Oh, poor Reggie on the bus. When I was your age, the only good thing I ever did was stick up for him that one time, and Vula heard me and told him, and he said thank you. But mostly when I was 13, I was a coward like the rest. while you statue outside your school to protest gun violence, while you draw pictures where every woman is the right kind of beautiful, while you get yourself up in the blue-black dawn for a world you know will come at you with claws, while you laugh with your brother, talk to your mother, while you lean into me and let me give you the hug I didn't even know I needed.
Ah, that's beautiful.
Thanks. I used to not be able to read that through for a long time.
Really?
Uh, that was in that last line where I just fell into it. Like, oh my God, I'm gonna hug her. I'm gonna need it more than she does.
Well, again, this is another example of the the rolling nature, you know,
I think I did
that you
too many
give.
of those in this selection. Too many rolling.
It's, I mean, they're unique, so how can you have too many? Um, but yeah, there's it's just like you went to confession. There's so much in here. Um, I mean, there is, and again, this is outside of my range of experience because, again, without kids, I don't have to revisit what kids are doing when they're 12 and 13. Um, and I'm also not given to reading very much about what's going on in their lives and in their world when they're 12 and 13. I mean, I taught for 25 years 10th grade and 12th grade, but there's a big difference between 12 and 13 and 15. And so I got to be very comfortable with kids later on in their adolescence. But 12 and 13 is still pretty much a closed book for me, except for the things I remember from my being 12 and 13, which of course happened in a world so different that the contrast between the references I would make about my life at that age, between that and the ones that you're making in this, to the ones that that you're imagining your daughter going through at that point. Um, I don't think it wouldn't be as effective because it would be too jarring. I mean, the lives are so different. So little about the lives of children in when I was a child is still true today.
Yeah.
And you touch on that in one of your other poems when you're talking about gunshots going on outside, outside the house. We didn't have any of that when I was a kid. So this is what I enjoy about this is that it simultaneously gives me insight into uh, two different types of early adolescence, both of which are pretty foreign to my own experience. In other words, what you're talking about going through at school is different from what I lived through, and what she's going through is different. Again, more further apart. So it's all it's all discovery for me. You know, it's and so because of that, it's very, very fresh. And so again, the form that you take of kind of it's all spilling out is great because I'm just being hit over and over and over and over again with fresh things that I haven't lived. Um,
I really love the honesty in this that the narrator has, the ability to just be out
yeah.
with it. And I find, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but when my kids were under 12, I never worried too much about writing poems about them. After that time,
Yeah.
I rarely write anything that I don't run by them first if I'm thinking about publishing it because
Wow.
they're really sensitive and we've been through some things together that maybe a lot of families go through, but are very personal.
Hmm.
And so you don't want to make your kid's life harder than it has to be. Um, so what I really appreciate is how this negotiates that so well, because it's really about the narrator
Yeah.
and about their vulnerabilities and maybe choices they wish they'd done differently, and how exposed they felt, and how the daughter is just killing it, doing it so much better. Um, so no one's going to object to that, and because it's really about the narrator. It's not really as much about the daughter, and I love how you negotiate that. I think you do a beautiful job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's just
Wow.
a poem of admiration for her and relief that
Mhm.
the strength that she has, and it can be, and looking back at my own experience, going, what a hot mess I could be. We all could be. Well, like she seems to got it all together. But you're right though that I've stopped sort of. I'm not doing that as much now. We're like, all right, can I? What is it? I got to take things and run them through things with them. Like and I'm never gonna. You never want to like expose or sell out or use somebody in your life for that without including them in on it. It can be tough. I had a poem once I had to read, in which I'm like also a bad person, and I think in the poem as teenagers I hit my brother in the groin area with a skateboard. Uh, and then I read the poem at a reading, which I thought, 'cause I'm like, oh yeah, he's gonna love this poem because it's that time that I was a jerk, and we and he's like, and after the reading, he said, hey, great job. He's like, but my groin was in the reading. Like, I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess it was. I thought, sorry, I didn't, he's like, hey, I didn't know that was coming. Everyone's thinking about my, I'm like, private parts. And now I'm like, all right, right. Point taken. Maybe I won't do that anymore. But
Well, you had a rare experience though, running this by your daughter and having her give her approval.
yeah,
I mean, that's could have gone south.
yeah, I could. It's already out there in the world. It's already being read. I'm like, oh yeah. Because I was thinking of something. I'm like, I'm doing something in their honor or in their beauty, but you don't know how someone's going to take it, especially when they're that age,
Yeah,
Exactly.
teenager. She was seeing it when she was like 16, 17. Her peers are reading it, and it's like, oh, this is different now. Um, any little thing you expose about a kid at that age, those teenage age, especially high school age, can be. They're just trying to like keep it all together, and you expose a flank that they weren't expecting, and it can be a lot.
yeah. Well, again, these are all territories that I have not been in a position to explore. When I write about my own family, they're all people who have since passed before I wrote about them, before I wrote the poems. So I was never in a position to see what they would have said or what they would have thought. Um, I have been in situations where I've been in relationships that engendered poems that um, might be problematic for the other person if they knew that I was writing about them. And sometimes the thing that you're writing about is so um, clear that you can't pretend it's not about them. And that can be a problem if they're people that you've broken up with and are sensitive about the past. So that's as so I wish I'd had an experience like yours, Matt, where somebody read it and said, "Oh, hey, this is very flattering."
Yeah.
I wrote a novel when I wrote my first novel, which didn't get published, and it's a good thing that it didn't get published. But when it was still in manuscript form, I ran into an old girlfriend, and we got talking about it. And she said, "Oh, can I read your manuscript?" And I said, "Sure." Well, I gave her the manuscript. She read it, and then she was outraged that there wasn't a character based on her in it.
Oh, you can't win.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
you're exactly right. There were other characters based on real people who would have excoriated me for what I said about them, not for what I didn't say about them.
Yeah.
So you're right. You can't win. Wow. Um, Boy, well, I have to go in a different direction here. I can't. I can't. Uh, but so I can't write about my children when they're young, but I can write about myself when I was young. And so that's what I do in this poem. And this is really a poem about my father, although it's expressed in terms of an encounter between him and the young version of me, who was a little too smart for my own good, or so I was to discover. This is called How I Learned About Pain. And I have a series of about 20 poems that are going back to the one that you were talking about of, when I was, when I was your mother, or they're like how I learned about X, how I learned about Y, how I learned about Z. This one is how I learned about pain. This takes me back to the age of about probably 7. This was another time. This was in the 50s. So the things that happened were not unusual for the times. Not to give my father a hard time. How I learned about pain. My father strapped me when I was a boy, but only once. I disobeyed my mother and lied about it when she questioned me. I thought I'd fooled her, but my mother knew. We'll wait until your father gets back home, she said. That took a long time. When he did, she met him at the door. When he walked in the kitchen, he said, "Get up to your room." Stairs had 13 steps. I didn't rush. I knew they'd talk it over. I crossed through the hall to my room, sat down on the bed, and waited. Then the footsteps on the stairs, deliberate. I counted them up to the landing and the short walk to my room. "Lie down across your bed," my father said. His voice was even, like he wasn't angry. "Take down your pants and underpants," he said. Face down on my stomach, that was awkward, but I wriggled both down to my knees. I wasn't looking at him, but I heard the slip his leather belt made in the loops, the buckle click, then quiet in his hand. I thought that he would hit me then. Instead, like he was reading from a list, he gave a reason. Then he snapped the leather down, and I yelped at the hot patch on my skin. And then another reason, and a snap. At 6, he gave a reason he'd used before. I said that wasn't fair. That gave him one more reason. I was crying. Still, I noticed that he didn't seem at ease. He paused before he hit me, and then after. He strapped me out of duty, but he took no joy in it. Although my bottom stung, I felt bad for him. I decided that I wouldn't put him in that spot again. So after that, I found ways to obey and still do what I wanted. 40 years went by before I got an explanation. I visited a year after he died and told my mother what I'd sensed that day. His father used to hit him all the time, she said, when he was growing up. Thought the old man used to like it, beating him. That's why he never raised his hand to you, except that once. At 7, I could feel it, his wrestling with the devil in his role, while knowing that I needed him to act. And deeper than my guilt or penitence, I could return a secret offering, a closeness ransom by exchange of pain.
I love that empathy you have for his pain of giving you pain.
I don't know how I knew it, but I
Yeah.
felt it.
Yeah, it's such a sensitive child to be so, most kids, if they're going to get hit, I mean, they're worried about getting hit, and the pain that's going to cause, not so much about what the other person is feeling or going through and doling that out.
And that he has to fulfill this role. He thinks he's supposed to, like, this is what we're supposed to do. I think I had a similar experience when I was little. Like my dad would do some things, but one big strapping like that when I was really young, and you almost felt like, oh, I'm supposed to do this. This is how we do. That's what dads do, aren't they? Because what he'd grown up with, and then realizing this isn't how to do it, but it's too late now. You can't put it back in the box now.
Well, that's why for me it was a two-part revelation. One that I had when I was 7, where I could feel that he was struggling with his sense of duty. But I didn't know why he was struggling until 40 years later when my mother told me that his father used to enjoy hitting him. So that moment took a 2-dimensional understanding I had and made it like a 3 or a 4-dimensional understanding, of what he was going through. I knew he was struggling when I was little, but I didn't know the thing he was struggling with. And by the time I found that out, he was already gone.
Yeah.
Because he was sensitive too. There was a kind of, like I say, there's a closeness that came out of that exchange because we were both in pain. It's a funny thing. The other thing about that is, from what you said, Marybeth, and Matt, maybe you will be able to relate to this. Sometimes, you get in situations where maybe somebody is beating on you, but they're not actually hurting you, and you think, this guy's a loser.
Yeah, it's something pathetic in it.
Yeah, does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's like that's the extra dimension. It's like you're being hit, but you've got the presence of mind to go, boy, he should be hitting me a hell of a lot harder than this. I'm defenseless. But he's not even really hurting. I mean, this happened to me once, and I'll never forget it. And I mean, there are plenty of incidents of violence in your work, Matt, that I've seen. So that's what makes me think that maybe you get the drift of that.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. There's almost feel like that. Like, this feel bad. This is just a show. This is like a dumb show.
Yeah.
Perpetuating because we're supposed to somehow is handed down the script that we're supposed
to.
Yeah,
but I'd still rather be me getting hit than him.
Yeah.
So
I think another element of the duty part of that, though, is the wait till your father gets home element as well. Like, anybody remember Matt's too young, but the TV show, there was a cartoon in the 70s, Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, and it was always like these kids would do this stuff all day and then wait till your father gets home and they get a beating or something, or there'd be consequences. And I didn't get hit like this, but I did. That was my mother's threat constantly, is wait till your father gets home, wait till your father gets home. And then he was like dumbfounded with like, what am I supposed to do?
Right. Yeah. So he says, go to your room.
Right. Yeah.
Now I got to figure this out. Like, I just came home from work. Now I got to do this.
Well, it was a free pass for your mother because she didn't, It was like, he's the dad, let him deal with it. I don't know what I would do, but I don't have to know. Yeah, that would have been very interesting to have heard over. I knew they were, when I was going upstairs to my room, she was giving him the story. That would have been a great, to be a fly on the wall for that, and because in fact, when she was alive, I should have asked her. I should have said, when you told him what I did, um, how did he take it? Did he take it like, well, okay, I'm going to go deal with this? Or was it clear to you that he wasn't going to enjoy having to hit me? I could have asked her that. I didn't. Now that I think of it, it's a little late, but that would have been a way to have some insight into what their dynamic was.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's how I learned about pain. Let's go to round 4. What do you have for us, Marybeth?
I'm going to read the Pantoum that's about my dad, and he's in memory care right now. He's 87, and it was, COVID just did so many people in so many ways. And my mom died in 2017, and he was okay for a few years after that. And we went out a lot. We were together a lot, and then we got separated, and he had his own household during COVID, and we didn't see him nearly enough, and he spent a lot of time alone. And although that doesn't cause Alzheimer's, I don't think it helped his whole mental
Yeah,
state.
right.
So box breathing, in case anybody doesn't know, it's kind of like a meditation kind of thing. It's a where you actually visualize a box, and it's 4 breaths in, you hold for 4, 4 breaths out, and then you hold for 4, and then you just keep repeating that. So box breathing. The hum resumes. It moves into the light. You've saved the fridge from yet another death. My third eye shifts from indigo to white. I'm boxing in and out and hold my breath. You save the fridge from yet another death. The care home calls. Dad wanders after dark. I'm boxing in and out and hold my breath. I sort his mail and help him make his mark. The care home calls. Dad wanders after dark. I free his glasses from his fingerprints. I sort his mail and help him make his mark. Your fingers stroke the inside of my wrists. I free his glasses from his fingerprints. He grabs my hands to keep me in the frame. Your fingers stroke the inside of my wrists. You fiddle with the stove. Restore the flame. He grabs my hands to keep me in the frame. Another hug for Dad before I leave. You fiddle with the stove. Restore the flame. When we embrace, his troubled mind's at ease. Another hug for Dad before I leave. He can't recall his son, the one who died. When we embrace, his troubled mind's at ease. I tell him childhood tales. We take a ride. He can't recall his son, the one who died. My third eye shifts from indigo to white. I tell him childhood tales. We take a ride. The hum resumes. We move into the light.
It's another one where like form just works so well with what's going on in the poem and this story. Like we have these, with memory loss, the need to repeat things and say it again and again and again, and yet those memories shift and they move around, just like the repeated lines are there, but they move because of the form of the pantoum. They have to keep shifting in place and taking on different contexts every time they're said. So it kind of serves the subject matter,
Thank you.
Yeah. Also, you have to live through the repetitions to get to some new piece of information at the end of each stanza. So it's like familiar, 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 new, and then it repeats. And so I guess the form requires that you end with the line that you begin with. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's another reinforcement of what you just said, Matt. That the form puts us in this endless loop.
I've had a friend, former colleague who went through this at the end of their career and would come in and tell the same story they had just told 5 minutes ago. And
yeah,
kind of see this and they're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? It was the beginning. You're like, oh, this is something's happening here. And but just that line that the about his the son who died, the son he can't remember. He can't remember his son, the one who died. He can't recall his son. I was like, oh, I keep hearing this line. It's so hard. Um, there's the loss, and loss upon loss. You even lose your losses, which is part of what makes you up, who you are.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. So I often ask people that write poems in form, at what point they realize the form, whether they determine the form before they even start to write, whether they figure it out somewhere along the way. Can you speak to that?
I think this did start out as a sonnet, and then that wasn't working. Because there's no turn. It just keeps repeating.
Oh,
So,
there you go.
and then that's when I thought, oh, I'll try a pantoum and see if that works better. And it was serving what I wanted to say better. So
Wow, that's interesting.
and it's like the villanelle where it keeps coming back on itself and you can't escape it. You can't get out of it. It can only go so far. Like narratively, it can only take you so far. So the story is boxed in by it, but so much happens, but you are bound inside it.
Yeah, for some people, I usually won't know what form I'm in. I mean, I'm always in meter, but as I write the first line, and start thinking about the next line, I usually realize at that point whether there's going to be a rhyme pattern, whether it's going to be a specific form or not. But I don't decide it. I kind of realize it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and because sometimes you try to force it into a form, it feels
Right.
forced. But if you feel it coming, like, oh my God, I'm doing something here. How might that work if I did it again? And what kind of, is that going to be a hustle? Is it going to be, maybe it's a tomb, a sestina, I mean, a villanelle, but like you start to see it starts to tell you what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. I've been in situations where I'll write 12 lines and think, well, I should just write a couplet and I'll have a sonnet. But what I really need to do is stop after 12 lines. In other words,
But it is.
it's the form should be driven by the matter of it, not unless you read the 12 lines and say what is not said here that needs to be said, and then it justifies maybe having a couplet. But I'm always suspicious of completing a form for the sake of telling myself that now it has this form. To kind of impose it instead of letting it come out naturally. And sometimes that's, when you start out as a writer, and you could be a writer of anything, but when you're young in the craft, whenever you get an idea that you really like, you don't want to cut it out because you don't know if you're going to have another idea that good. But you learn that there are situations where it doesn't matter how good it is, it's got to go. And that's one of the important early lessons to really learn and internalize, to trust, that sometimes, even though it was one of your best ideas, it doesn't belong.
Yeah, maybe it belongs somewhere else. Don't
Well,
throw it out.
yeah,
You have to
exactly.
kill it completely, but you can put it in a shelf for a little while.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. So great. All right. Well, we're
There.
That's a lot of repetitive forms out of you two. I'm not contributing.
I've been using, repetition, but not so much certain, particular forms and all these poems I've sent. I do write in form a lot, but I think just happen not to have a lot of them into this
Sure.
particular
Oh
collection.
yeah. Well, I mean, I have your books.
Um, but if I was going to go, am I up? I'm up again, right?
Yes, you are.
So I might just keep it on the father theme then, since we're writing about fathers. The last couple poems dealt with fathers. Um, I have there's a poem, Oblation, that it came out of an experience with a friend of mine who grew up in a um, very conservative Christian context. The house grew up, and his dad was really tough on him, and his dad would take him hunting, and they always tell him the Abraham and Isaac story before they go hunting, and he'd always say, walk in my. He would repeat the verses from the Bible. He was a very, very strict, very,
Wow.
and he'd actually asked his father like that, if God told you to kill me, would you do it? He's like, Absolutely. Uh, and I won't name him right now, but he was we taught English together, and he would tell me the stories. I'm like, wow, and he's still working through that stuff, and he still loves his dad and does stuff with his dad. But that particular story really haunted him. Every time he thought he'd go out in the woods with his dad, he thought this might be the I don't come back. When you're
Wow.
young,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's disturbing.
That's
I
like,
was thinking
that's
about,
like I'm sorry. That's like the East of Eden relationship.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
You know, with the
Um,
Trasks, father
yep.
and son. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, yeah. Now I want to go back and I haven't read that in so long. I went, oh yeah, I gotta read it, East of Eden again. I haven't read it in years. Um, so I was thinking about that story because my dad could be really tough sometimes and kind of even brutal at periods, but I know he would never have done that. If God asked him to do something like that, I was sort of like, he'd say a few things to God. He would say, you're not, no one's touching my kids. I at least say, like, except and maybe me, but nobody else is gonna, do something to him. So I had that idea in my head when I wrote this poem, Oblation, which is, that word just means like a thing presented or offered to God. It's a short little poem. I think it just came out in the comment recently. Um, Oblation. My dad could be tough and distant and push a little too hard into what hurt. But if God pulled that Isaac shit saying, I want you to sacrifice your son for me, it never would have got as far as me strapped to some Moriah altar. If I was nearby, he'd tell me to go inside. Then he'd resign, curtly quit from God, flick a lucky at the old man's feet and walk away. Later, I'd know he'd joke, that fucking guy, he couldn't spell God if you spotted him the G and the D, making me laugh, even if behind his eyes he was making peace with perdition.
Uh, that's that's great. That's
Uh,
succinct. It's elegantly succinct.
my dad used to have that. He used to say like he would talk about somebody he think was very smart. He's like, that guy's so dumb he couldn't spell car if you gave him the C and the R. And so I kind of took that his actual kind of quote and put it and landed in this poem. And it kind of
Yeah, yeah.
try to capture him. His whatever he was tough at, he would never let that fly. There'd be no sacrifice.
Well, this is super economical, and you have exactly the necessary um, concentration of detail because the few details that you present are so apt. Flicking a lucky at the old man's feet is just, you cannot improve on that line.
Yep.
Thanks.
I love
It's
that.
it expresses everything you need to know about the father. It's wow. And then of course the joke. But I like the way in the final line you have him accepting the consequence. It's not all attitude.
Yeah.
It's also perception and acceptance. It's like this, I'm the one making the sacrifice, not my kid.
I always got the feeling he would be willing to doom himself for his boys.
Mhm.
And I think he did in a lot of ways. The way he worked and try to, provide for us, destroyed his, his physical health.
Yep.
A lot of ways. He just worked himself too hard. So, but he was willing to doom himself for the sake of his family. But yeah, he knew like that idea. I don't know how I just stumbled into that idea of like, you know what? He was a Catholic. He probably knows where this is going to end. Uh,
Yeah. Well, that's what I like about it is that it turns into consequence, and then, as I say, it means he's not just rejecting the sacrifice of his son; he's accepting his own sacrifice in the place of his son, and that's a different wrinkle on the Abraham and Isaac story.
yeah.
But that's a powerfully valid one, and for modern context, a really useful one, I think. Yeah. Wow.
Well, it's funny because I don't have a good religious upbringing. And so I didn't get some of the religious aspects of this. And when I read oblation, I thought it had to do with the heart because my husband had an oblation procedure. And to me, that's fit really beautifully with the poem, right? Because this is all about heart. Awesome. And so that was how I was interpreting it. And I really loved it. Yeah.
So what is it, medically speaking, what does that mean?
I'd have to look it up again, but when he had aphids, so they had to do an ablation, and they actually went in and they had to like reshock his heart to get it back into its rhythm. And I don't know if and ablation was part of it. I don't know if that's ablation itself, but it has to do with it. And this is a poem of heart. I mean, this is a poem of like, I choose my son, and no one's going to get in the way of that, and even God. So it worked perfectly, even without those of us who are religiously challenged.
Yeah.
Well, of course, if you go back to Bob Dylan, God said to Abraham, "Kill me his son." Abe said, "God, you must be putting me on."
Yeah. He put me on. Yeah. But I love that double meaning. I had forgotten. I now you reminded me that as a medical term, I've heard it before, and I hadn't thought of it when I was writing with it. I love how that works on those different levels. Yeah. I just thought it was a word I came across. Ooh, this sounds cool. Like the sacrifice, presented to God. And
yeah, I've never heard it in the medical context. So, wow.
It's always good when it works in more than one way.
Yeah.
Well, when all the ways are okay. Sometimes somebody will give you an interpretation that you missed that is not at all what you wanted to say. And then, it can be problematic. Well, okay, I have to set this next one up because it's an unusual set of circumstances that occasioned this poem. Even though it kind of explains itself within the poem, this did really happen the way that I describe it. I really did make a recording surreptitiously of the family dinner at Easter and kept the recording and put it on a CD. And the thing that maybe I don't go into enough detail in the poem itself is that here in my house, I have a finished basement. And so I have a staircase that leads downstairs, where most of the time I'm downstairs. But if I go up the stairs, I have dinner upstairs. But it's an open stairwell, and my sound system is down here in the basement. So if I place something on the sound system, the sound comes up the stairwell, and it sounds like people are talking downstairs. That's what you need to know. And maybe I say that in the poem, but I do want to make it clear. It's called The Ghost of Easter's Past. And I have a peculiarity of writing poems on holidays and birthdays. And so this was written on Easter, March 31st, in 2013. The table is the same, my parents' plates and silverware as well, brought from their house after they died. The empty dinner chairs surround me on three sides. Set out before me, made by my own hands, this Easter dinner. A rib roast, mushroom caps and gravy, green glistening asparagus beneath a scattering of slivered almonds, brown potatoes with their darkened edges, all delicious from the surety of skill developed in the careful years I've lived alone. A German chocolate cake I've baked awaits, its coconut and pecan frosting ready to dress the single piece I'll serve myself tonight. The rest spread piecemeal later. I played for the occasion a recording I made in secret at our Easter dinner in '79. The family was large then, boisterous, alive. The extra leaves were added to my parents' dinner table, and all the relatives had come to share the afternoon procession of the feast my mother hurled for proof of love and power. Knowing, as they did not, of the recorder hidden beneath the window seat, I spoke hardly at all throughout, and hours passed as human chamber music, intimate, dramatic, unimagined by Beethoven or Janáček, was scrawled across the wall of the holiday, all caught by the machine. Now, from home theater speakers in the basement, the distant voices of that day rise up. The twisting open stairwell lets them reach me. The floor ensures a separation. All the characters joined in the riot of parts below have passed away. A form of resurrection lets them speak again from memory, and only I remain to listen to and to extend our story.
I love the human chamber music. No, it seems to capture that so well, and thinking about all the stories that are going on, and even though you don't know I mean, we had a lot of home, the old reels. My dad would take film in minutes of stuff, and we have a lot of holidays where we have minutes of this by the tree or that or the other thing. But that's coming. This is kind of like in the background because you're doing it surreptitiously, and but it's just as powerful, right? Because it's now you have it to go back to and you have it to listen to, and
well, in the characters, my family was a collection of storytellers, and I got my pension for it from my dad, but they were all characters and they were all storytellers, and it was there's no way that I could describe what it was like, so I recorded it, and I honestly did have Easter dinner upstairs and listened to this dinner that we all had, by which time everyone on the recording except me was dead.
Oh,
that's tough. Yeah.
that's powerful. I love, but this idea of resurrection with the sound was great. That a form of resurrection, and it being Easter, and so apropos to that,
Yeah. Well, and again, I don't know. Well, in '79, I was 31, so I mean, I thought it out very carefully. I thought I may not have that whole group of people passed by the end of the 90s. So I played this recording on Easter of 2013. So it had been a long time since any of them had been alive. My parents died in the mid and late 90s, and the other family members before them. So it's hard, even though the poem attempts to describe the feeling. There was a bizarre sense of displacement between the present and the past. I'm here in and I'm at the same table with the same chairs, the same dishes, but I'm alone. And I hear coming up through the stairwell, as though if I went down the stairs, it was all happening down there. It's a very unusual experience, but one that was very deliberately planned and executed. And I only did it once. I still have the recordings, but I felt like there was some kind of, that it was appropriate in some unique way for me to play this thing while I was having Easter dinner. And of course, by 2013, I was willing to make it sound like I was a decent cook, as I was not when I wrote Getting the Eggplant Right. There I'm emphasizing how helpless I was. So this is a strange, I don't think you're likely to run into this kind of a poem anywhere else.
But like for me, with the 16 millimeter film, I have them all and I know where they are. And we even have I took my aunt and uncle's old film projector that I could play them. I haven't been able to bring myself to do it.
Wow.
Because I know it'll be fun on one hand, but it'll be really sad because they're all gone.
That's why I've only done it once.
Yeah. So I understand the feelings there. Yeah.
And it was completely unvarnished. They did not know. And so they're just being themselves. I did not come from a community of saints. So there are things on that tape that I wouldn't want anybody else to ever hear. But I can hear it and not condemn my bigoted uncle, etc.
It makes me think. My Jill McDonough. You guys know Jill McDonough's poetry? She teaches down in Boston, and great poet. And we were talking about bigoted uncles, and we wanted to write a poem. We got to write a poem for. There is a heaven for semi-racist uncles somewhere.
Oh, that's great! I'd love to read that.
Idea, somewhere where there's a heaven for semi-racist uncles.
Well, in my case, I have written a poem about that uncle, but and it touches on that theme, but that's backgrounded somewhat. What's foregrounded is the fact that he was 4F during the Second World War, and so he ran a bar in downtown Haverhill. Yeah. And it was right by the train station, so that GIs leaving or arriving on the train could pop into the bar for a pop. And the thing that distinguished him was that he had a pet duck that he walked on a leash down from. They live way down along the river. And so he would walk the duck up to this bar and open the bar and get a dish and put beer in it and put it on the bar and put the duck on the bar. And the duck would drink the beer and get drunk and wobble around the bar. And that was like the entertainment.
Wow, that's a great story.
Well, I got it in a poem.
Yeah, we gotta find that poem. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's in one of my middle. It's in the second or the third book, but yeah. Anyway, he's on this tape, and no one will hear what he said, but.